Guys, welcome back. Divisional round DFS cashing points live stream. This is the 20th one of the year, 20th episode. Man, this has been a fun year. This is going to be our last one of the year, so we're going to be kind of emptying the tanks on everything with this 4-game slate. We got a great one here. As you can see, we got a 5-man show. Real quick, couple news and notes. You can see it on the ticker coming across the screen. Look up. See it? Look up. Super early bird period is 30% off. We are actually going to be ending that on the Super Bowl. So if you haven't resubscribed for 2022, you need to get on that now. It's 30% off. You can use that either for a premium package if you just want the standard package, if you want to kind of bundle it all together and go ahead and get the draft guide and an optimizer for 2022. You should do it. 30% off. It'll get you covered all throughout the off season. So you can get our best ball stuff, all of our early ranks if you're grinding best ball early. So yeah, it'll cover you. 2022 off season, all throughout the season and through the postseason as well. So get on that now. Get yourself 30% off. I want to save you some cash flow. But guys, 5-man show. I'm pumped for this. I've been looking forward to this all day. We got our usual Scott and Johnny are here, but Wes and Jake Tribbey are here. Wes is going to be breaking down the advanced matchups, which is already up on the site. Jake has been campaigning with Scott on the slate breakdowns. And guys, how's it going, Scott? 20th show, man. We finally made it. No DFS shows after this week, so we gotta get it all right here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. This is final show of the year. We got to come correct. Can't leave anything on the table. I'm excited. We got an all-star cast. We got Jake Tribbey, recently nominated for Best Football Writer of the Year. We got the legend Wes Huber. We just lost John Proctor. And I have to relish in that because I'm always the boomer who, shows up late, the computer's not working, and second week in a row, Johnny messed it up. So we're starting off on a good footing, or at least I am. And I'm excited for this slate, man.
Yeah, man, poor Johnny. He's having some internet issues. I think he was having some issues last week too. So
he's not here. So let's talk trash on him. He stinks.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a boomer.
The stone worst. He's probably lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to DFS this year. Just the worst. But yo, Wes, how's it going, man? I know you've got to be like relishing in 4 games as opposed to 16 right now. So how's everything going on your end, man?
Yeah, I can't really bring myself to spend less time, even though there's less games for some reason.
I feel that.
I end up looking at everything so much that it takes me the same amount of time. It's maddening.
No, I feel you.
Yeah, I mean that's just your dedication to your craft. Like you can tell every time you read one of your pieces. It's just like no one puts in the work you're doing, not just in terms of hours, but just like what every stone is not left unturned. Really digging through everything, finding things that everyone else seems to miss, and it's just a credit to you're really a master of your craft.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, man. Yeah, seconded. And I feel you on that, Wes. Like honestly, I love it because it allows me to kind of like dig more into games than I normally would. Which kind of like it's like a blessing and a curse. You get to dig more in, but at the same time, I kind of feel like I overthink things when on some of these short slates. So I try to like scale it back a little bit so I can kind of like have that 1,000-foot level view that I feel like I'm pretty good at. Jake, last one we haven't talked to, man. How's everything going on your end?
Going well, man. Going well. Having a pretty good day so far after the surprise FSWA nomination, and I mean, this is an incredible slate of games. So I'm super excited for the weekend and excited to talk some ball.
Yeah. So Jake and I did the slate breakdown. Quarterbacks and running backs are already up. I'll update that after this live stream, and then probably that's it. Wide receivers and tight ends will be up in probably an hour, 2 hours. So definitely check all that out. I haven't had the chance to read Wes's work, just, too far behind on my own stuff. So Wes, please chime in if you disagree with me on anything, because, that's such a staple of my weekly process is reading that article.
Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah. Wes's stuff has been great. We got Proctor back too. Everything going all right, man?
No, yeah, my computer just like literally restarted. very.
No,
I've been the boomer.
Again, or?
No, not completely unrelated to last week. I don't know.
Do you want me to show you how to use a computer, Johnny?
Yeah, I think I need to build a new PC. This one's, I guess, 8 years old now. It's running out of steam.
Yeah, you need to upgrade, man. 8-year-old computer.
Your computer runs on Steam?
Yes.
Is that what they run on?
Mine runs on gold.
Just smelting down the gold. Yes, Jelpers, by the way, in YouTube chat, is this Fantasy Sports Writer of the Year nominee Jake Tribbey? Yeah, it is. We are
Jake Tribbey?
We are blessed to be in his presence. We're all Hey, I feel so bad about that. I'm usually really good with names, Ben. I felt really bad.
No, you're good. You're good, Graham. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, I feel bad. Tribbey. But yes, we are blessed to be in his presence. We're just mere mortals. But guys, let's do it. 4-game slate, really fun slate, man. I love the slate. Bengals Titans. First game up. Titans are 3.5-point favorites. Over is 47.5. The King is back. Derrick Henry is back. He's going to play. This will be the key to the slate, obviously, kind of figuring out how much Henry plays, what his workload limitations are going to be, if there is going to be one. Can't wait to talk to you guys about it. Real quick, Bengals side, Larry Ogunjobi suffered a foot injury last week. He's going to be out for the season. Trey Hendrickson has a concussion. I think he's going to be back, and they're missing Mike Daniels too. He's like a depth piece on their D line. Bengals run defense got whacked last week. Josh Jacobs, who was not explosive at all for most of the season, got 6.4 yards per carry last week. And this isn't like a one-game anomaly either. Chiefs running backs had 7.4 yards per carry against the Bengals back in week 17. So this is, a really interesting spot, man, for Henry. We got to talk through it first. What do we think the workload will be for Henry, and how do you guys think this will kind of flow?
Yeah, I'll step in here first. So I did some digging on, what kind of some medical experts think. Pro Football Doc said that he didn't think Henry would be 100% healthy for this game. Edwin Porras, our injury expert, said, I think they'll ease him in. Not sure he'll see greater than 70% of snaps quite yet. I wouldn't trust him unless it's attorney. When you dig through the numbers, he really has to hit about 60% of his normal workload to be completely removed from the cash game conversation and to drop out of roughly the top 5 RB values on both sites. And I personally think that's a pretty conservative estimate, just given how much better the Titans offense is with him on the field. So I think he's pretty likely to see a high percentage of snaps, but the touches are the iffy part. It could be closer to 20, in which case he's probably not a great play. But if he hits 30, he's obviously, the smash play of the slate.
Yeah.
Proctor, what do you think here on Henry?
I'd say it's pretty much a 0% chance he gets into the 30s and touches. But I do think he can push for 20. I think the one thing he probably gets none of that 3rd and long type work that he was getting sort of hit or miss. Some weeks he would get some weeks he wouldn't earlier in the season. So, you were sort of penciling him in for 3 catches or whatever, or 3 targets. And I think that's probably out. But at the same time, the value of Henry isn't, you weren't really ever playing Henry to get, 30 carries for 120 yards. You're playing Henry to get 30 chances for 80-yard touchdowns. And so, you're still getting, 18 to 20 chances at a 70, 80-yard touchdown. And it seems like, based on what Dr. Chow and a couple other people were saying, it seems like it's more of a planting issue and a hesitation issue. But I think if he gets in the open field, he's probably fine. Yeah. If he really rips one off.
Yeah, I just think, man, the Titans are going to be obviously really cautious. And if he's feeling good in game, they're going to let him roll, and I don't think, I'm with you, he's not going to get upwards of the 25 to 28 carries that his ceiling is. But our projections have him at 19 carries. I think I'd, pretty much agree, spot on, 18 to 20, 15 is the floor, probably 22 is the ceiling. But even that, especially against this Bengals run defense that I mentioned has kind of come unglued here as of late. ceiling's still there. What do you think ownership will be?
I mean, I don't think anyone really knows.
Yeah.
So I think ownership projections on Henry, you shouldn't feel really comfortable with them. I've seen some places have him around like 20 to 25. Some places have him in like the 10 to 15 range. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if in some lower dollar tournaments, I think he will probably be higher owned than the higher dollar tournaments. I think in the higher dollar stuff, the one advantage you have in not playing Henry is there are 3 more games spaced out. So you get to see whether Henry, skull fuck the Bengals or not, and then you can adjust after that. So, but I think in like the $5 and $10 tournaments, like your grandmother is going to say, "Oh, Derrick Henry is 7,500. I'm going to play him." So I think this is one of those weird weeks where ownership on him is going to be really different based on the cost point of the contest.
Yeah. And like we were talking about last week too, I mean, the early game typically it can go over owned too. So I think that's also in Henry's favor. I know that's a loaded question, but yeah. Yeah, man. AJ Brown. We got to talk through AJ Brown. Wes, I mean,
let's talk about Ryan Tannehill first.
Okay.
So, so what's really interesting is that Tannehill, JM and I talked about this all year, is surprisingly really highly correlated with Derrick Henry. Tannehill averages 4.7 more fantasy points per game with AJ Brown back. I don't know how Tannehill hits even mildly if AJ Brown doesn't post a monster game. So he averages 4.7 more fantasy points per game with AJ Brown. Interestingly, with Henry, it jumps by 5 fantasy points per game. So he's actually even better with Henry. And then when both are together, obviously, it jumps even higher. And the theory there is lighter fronts makes things easier on Tannehill rather than hanging the safeties back, not really worried about the lesser talented running backs. And remember, prior to this season, which was like a pretty bad season from Tannehill, where a lot of missed games from AJ Brown, a lot of missed games from Derrick Henry. From his first start in a Titans uniform until the start of this season, he ranked first in yards per attempt, first in adjusted yards per attempt, first in PFF grade, second in fantasy points per dropback, fourth in fantasy points per game. So I think everyone is going to be viewing Tannehill as the shitty Tannehill of 2021. Maybe his play wasn't bad. Wes can speak to that. But from a fantasy perspective, it was certainly underwhelming. And not the Tannehill before that, the Tannehill with a healthy Henry and Brown. So I think there's an argument to be made for some upside there. Some Tannehill plus AJ Brown plus Derrick Henry stacks. It's going to go lower owned. So really just an upside case there for tournaments. But beyond that, he's not really popping as a super strong value. And then, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think one thing too that Henry adds is that he's like the rare running back that speeds up games. So I think that has added some value into Tannehill's numbers too, because the Titans are like so slow. And the only time that we see those games really blow up is when Henry or Brown rips off like a 50 or 60 yarder, which is what you want for this game to hit the ceiling. And I think this is a reasonable game for that to happen because both teams give it up deep.
Yeah. I said that I would just real quick. I said the same thing in the game hubs this week when I was writing up this game for Pace. Like, when this offense is right, when the Titans offense is right, I mean, they put up points and, I mean, Wes can speak to this more. I mean, but like this Bengals defense is not someone we should be running away from by any means. And if the Titans are going to put up points here, I mean, this game, even though the pace is bad, definitely has, 50-point upside. Also, Titans have a higher implied total right now than the Bucks by like a quarter of a point. So I mean, markets are expecting them to do really well here. But Wes, I wanted to ask you about AJ Brown. I mean, he's like, if there's one guy in the league I wish I had a crystal ball on, it'd be him. What are your thoughts here on this spot for him? And, I guess as it relates to Tannehill as well.
Well, the Bengals are using a high rate of cover two, and cover two has been his kryptonite. Cover two, cover six, and but then they're kicking in with a top 15 rate of cover one, and so. But I mean, when you look at AJ Brown against cover two, cover six, it's like he's completely outside the territory of somebody that you want to target. I mean, zero touchdowns against both coverages during his career, and just horrible efficiency. And the same goes for Ryan Tannehill, and which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm not on either guy, and I think this offense is going to go through Henry, and if they try to kick love Henry in this game, then they're gonna lose to the Bengals.
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
I I feel like this game comes down to really whoever scores the first touchdown, puts Tennessee in negative game script. You have to, that takes some potency out from under the run game and Henry. Um, but if that's the case, let's say Tennessee gets behind early and Burrow is back to being the Burrow of old. Do you think, still Brown's going to disappoint? Do you think there's any viability to Julio Jones or Nick Westbrook Akina? I went in deep on all these matchups in my article. You can read that, but basically the conclusion was, I don't really like them at all, even on Tannehill stacks.
Well, Julio's just as bad against cover two, so he's not viable. So, but here's the thing: when Cincinnati gets behind, especially excuse me, when Cincinnati gets ahead, and especially when they get a double-digit lead, they kick in a high rate of cover one, and I mean, obviously that's where Tannehill and Brown are gonna thrive. But in that scenario, Henry's taken out of the game, and it's going to be a bad situation unless Julio steps up. So if Tennessee gets behind, it's going to be bad news for them, but it could be good news for people that invest in Brown and Tannehill. But like I said, I think when they asked Henry if he was going to play in this game, the reporters, he was like, we'll just have to see, and they were asking about his workload, and he's like, yeah, I don't really know. And then he kind of looked up and smiled at him. I don't think he's going to be held back at all. I think
Mm.
look, Derrick Henry, he already suffered an injury exactly like this during his career. His freshman year during spring camp, he had the same injury. A player rolled up on his ankle, and there were a lot of outlets reporting that he'd be out for the entire year. Yeah, he was back by week one. And it's a situation that I don't think they're gonna. It's like Jair Alexander with Green Bay. He's not going to be active unless he's going to be 100%. And there's no way that they're going to feature Henry, in a playoff game where they have home field advantage, which they may, you could make the argument that we'll never see Tennessee with the number one seed and home field advantage in the playoffs over the rest of Derrick Henry's career. So this is
yeah,
it. This is it right here. If
yeah,
if they're going to win, if they're going to do something with this team, it's right now. It's not next year when Henry's feeling, 5% better. It's right now. So I don't buy into the narrative that they're gonna play it easy with Henry, and I don't think he's gonna want him to either.
I
I
love
mean,
that take.
no, and I think to that point, the Titans have no incentive to come out and say this is how we're going to use Henry. Like if he's rolling and feeling good, I'm with you, Wes. It also feels like I don't know, man. It's felt like this all year. Like the Titans have just been massively underrated by everybody. I mean, I think the fact that they're getting just 3.5 points here at home, coming off rest. I mean, Vrabel has been awesome against rest. Tom Brawley put this in our game hubs this week, but I mean, this was an amazing note. Vrabel is 8-0 outright and against the spread coming off a bye or a Thursday night game since 2018. 8-0 outright and ATS, man. I mean, it just feels like the Titans are underrated here now that they're getting their guy back. Like if he's rolling, I mean, it's going to be tough to stop. Um, let's talk through Bengals side. Burrow, I kind of the thing that's like holding me back on the Bengals this week is like I'm not fully convinced that Zach Taylor and their offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, are like sharp enough to take this team to the next level. I mean, I thought the Bengals should just roll like against the Raiders last week. Burrow was doing Burrow things, and they were extremely conservative in the second half. They called 12 passes to just 8 runs in the second half on early downs last week. And I mean, that should have been like 15-5, especially given how bad the Bengals have run the ball for the last like 6 weeks. I mean, they struggled last week, but I mean, Nixon has been under 3.8 yards per carry now 6 straight games, previous 5. So I really hope they just come out and chuck it. Wes, I'm going to toss it back to you. I mean, Titans have been, we've been targeting receivers against the Titans all year. I mean, this is the spot where Burrow and Chase just have to go nuclear, right? If they're going to win.
Yeah, I'm not betting against Burrow, even though the cover 4 numbers aren't that great. In Tennessee, they've been used on a high rate of cover 2, and that speaks to their run defense. So in a cover 4, you have 2 read safeties. So they're reading their coverage responsibilities, usually guys that are lined up between the hash marks or right off the hash marks. So they're reading their inside guys there. Usually what's referred to as the number 2 receivers or the number 3s. And if those guys show any type of indication that they're going to block, then those read safeties are going to drop down and they're going to attack the run. You look at the Titans. I mean, they've been a top 3 run defense all year, and they're using that high rate of cover 4. But it's a really vulnerable defense to the pass. But we haven't seen Burrow really take advantage of that yet. But Chase has been eating it up because he knows exactly how to attack it. And so I'm all over Chase in this game. I think he's gonna do really well. I haven't seen the latest from Jackrabbit Jenkins, but I did see that he had something like an ankle going on, and so in that scenario, we're gonna see a lot of maneuvering there. So I think that's going to benefit T. Higgins. It's going to benefit Jamar Chase as well. But and then you look at the numbers. They're a lot more vulnerable to the slot, and Boyd, he's been really effective. I think he's really coming into his own inside of this offense, working with 2 other dangerous receivers. So yeah, I think I think he's going to shred. He's been the best quarterback in the NFL the last several weeks. So I don't think we can bet against him in this one, even though the Titans are using a lot of cover 4. I think we're going to get to a point, and maybe next year, maybe the year after, where Burrow's going to have a coverage profile a lot like Matthew Stafford's, where he doesn't have a single weakness against any coverage, and especially with these 3 receivers.
Yeah.
Wes, was there anything with regard to Jamar Chase's bust games, like Denver holding him to 3 yards, Pittsburgh holding him to 39, that had to do with, the coverage or how they played him, maybe bracket coverage that could tip us off in any regard?
Well, when I was looking at him pre-draft, the thing that stood out above everything else, and is before we got the numbers from the combine, and I wrote up his profile prior to that, and the thing that stood out above everything else was his late separation. So from what I've seen I'm pretty sure I've watched every game. I attended one of them. It was that late separation. It wasn't there as much when he was playing against the really athletic corners like Patrick Surtain that really shut him down. And so that's something to look at. But in this game, I don't see that from Christian Fulton. He's been good, but he's a better zone corner than he is a man corner. If the Titans, they used a top 12 rate of cover 1. If they even dare go to man at a high rate, the Bengals are going to destroy the secondary. There's nobody in the secondary that can hang with Jamar Chase and man-to-man. They have to play zone, and if they do, it's going to be a lot of cover 2. Cover 4 first, of course, and then cover 2. There's no way they can play a high rate of man, and I think they know that.
I just want to say on Graham's point about the Titans being underrated, shout out to me for telling everyone to bet the Titans at plus 1,600, because all they did was beat the Texans, and now it's at plus 850. But the one team I wanted to bet beyond the Titans was the Bengals. So this is a really interesting matchup for me. I love all three wide receivers. Obviously, Chase. Like I no longer think this is a wide receiver 1A, wide receiver 1B with like massive volatility. I think it's just he's the clear wide receiver 1. He's already a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, and he's going to command that level of volume. Granted, if he's somehow slowed down, we could see T. Higgins go off. He is massively underrated upside. Boom games of 45, 39, 37 fantasy points over his last six games, but one catch for 10 yards last week where Chase went off. Like, again, clearly the wide receiver 1, but Tyler Boyd's been super, super underrated over that span. Since week 11, he's averaging significantly more yards per game than Stephon Diggs. Really productive over this recent hot streak. And he has a near perfect matchup. The Titans are giving up the most second most fantasy points per game to opposing slot wide receivers. Mike Vrabel in his press conference came out and said, he was asked, like, did you learn anything from Las Vegas's defense? And he said, yeah, I thought they did a really good job of keeping everything out in front of them, shutting down the deep ball. And like, that's true. But, I don't know how successful they're going to be. The Raiders ranked top 3 against deep passes. The Titans ranked bottom 5 on the year. So that seems like a really attractive matchup. If they're somehow successful, that would point more towards a Boyd game. But the way we have it, we have Chase as a top 3 wide receiver value on both sites. The problem is he's very close to Adams and Kupp, who I personally like more. But I mean, it's so close. And then Tyler Boyd, a top 5 value, and then Higgins farther behind. So though some other sites have him higher. Joe Burrow led all quarterbacks in passing fantasy points per pass attempt during the regular season. Led all of them. The one thing that was holding him back was the lack of pass volume. They were far more run heavy, especially with good game script. But we've seen over the last 3 weeks that skyrocket. Pass attempts per game are up 30%. They're throwing significantly more often on early downs, and the results have been incredible. Hottest QB in football right now, 400 plus passing yards per game, 4 passing touchdowns per game. We have him as the QB2 of the slate behind Josh Allen. And for tournaments, it's like really hard not to fall in love with him and all these 3 pass catchers. Uzoma, he had the matchup last week. We were sort of on it. That was a hit, but it's not there this week. I'm inclined to just take the profits and play someone else.
So here's my issue with Burrow and this game is that Burrow has lots of viable pass catchers, and Burrow is not going to be the QB1 unless he gets a lot of passing volume and this game moves up tempo. I mean, this game has a chance. This would be the most likely or second most likely game to be the lowest scoring on the week. And I think if you stack the low scoring games in these playoff slates, you just get dusted.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to worry about. And I think that's why, if someone builds a team and they play Burrow, Boyd, Uzoma, like that's a bad team, because this game doesn't go off unless Higgins or Chase, hit a big one. And I think AJ Brown on the other side or Derrick Henry, like you really have to think of the ways that this game gets up tempo, because we have Zach Taylor is happy to take the foot off the gas because he's a donkey. Vrabel is happy to take the foot off the gas just because that's kind of like what the Titans do, and it's been successful. So that's a concern. Like the floor of this game is really low. Ceiling is there, absolutely. But like if Boyd, Higgins, and Chase all have an okay game, and like Burrow puts up 24, then like they're all dead on this slate.
How many points do you need from Chase in order for Burrow stacks to smash?
I don't think you need all that much from Chase. You just need him to like move the tempo up. So like we saw like the Raiders game where they dinked and dunked the entire game. Uzoma and Chase were successful, but Burrow didn't do shit.
If Chase drops 30, Kupp drops 20, Adams drops 20, Diggs drops 15, then aren't Burrow lineups by far the best?
Not if not if Allen puts up 40 or Mahomes puts up 40 or Stafford puts up 40. That's the issue. Like, if you're stacking this game, you need to tell yourself a story of how the game gets moving. And I do think that can happen, but that's why I just would be careful with how I'm constructing the lineups from this game. Like, I think a really interesting same game parlay is like AJ Brown with a 40 plus reception, Jamar Chase with a 40 plus reception, both with a touchdown and over. I mean, that can happen in this game. You just have to be cognizant of how it does.
Well, here's one scenario. So the Bengals, they're not going to be able to run the ball against the Titans. So we're going to see that pace pick up. And, and with the Titans, they're going to probably run the ball quite a bit. So I think in that scenario, because I don't see AJ Brown doing it, so he's not. We're not going to see the Titans moving the ball down the field consistently like they did against the 49ers, just peppering Brown. So, and they're using the fourth highest pace this season. So, if the Bengals were to speed up the game, I think I already bet the over on this game total. I think we're going to see higher scoring than what Vegas is implying. I'm not saying that it's going to be the highest scoring game on the slate, but I think that there are a lot of components. Now I'm not trying to argue that I'm going to go out there and stack Burrow with Chase and Uzoma. Definitely not. But a Burrow Chase with a Henry run back, absolutely. I think that's something that I would which I am putting into my lineup. So I'm not going crazy with it, but I think it's viable.
Hey, do you agree with that? Bengals aren't going to be able to be too successful with the ground game and Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's either, the first or second toughest matchup for opposing running backs by schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, and they're super soft against wide receivers, second worst by schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. So I imagine Cincinnati is going to attack through the air, and I mean, they have the best group of receivers remaining in the playoffs, so that route makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, though, I mean, Bengals were the second slowest team in the league when trailing this year, and if they're going to be behind by a field goal like the spread implies, I mean, I don't think we can expect Taylor to go up tempo. The only way, kind of to Johnny's point, I think I touched on this earlier, but like the only way this game really goes off is like we need Henry to rip off a 70-yarder or Chase to rip off a 70-yarder, which is definitely live. But I think if we're just expecting like these two teams just to play fast, like Bills and Chiefs, like that's just that's just a guess. Based on the data, like. That's just not going to happen. Bengals are so slow in all game situations, even when trailing too. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not expecting Taylor to come out and just start ripping off plays left and right like the Chiefs or Bills or anything like that. So this game definitely has the pieces to go off, but structurally, I think it's right there with Niners Packers is the slowest game of the week. Any like small pieces to this game? I mean, I know Ferkser scored twice in the last Titans last game out, but he's been splitting around with Swaim.
No, I like Ferkser in this one. He's the small guy in this one that I like. He's I think last two games since Michael Pruitt went down, he's run 13 routes on third down, 8 receptions, 2 touchdowns. He's really stepped up. So he's a guy that they don't want to use. They already were using him as a blocker too much. He's a liability there. But when Pruitt went down, they had no choice. Brian Izzo's the only tight end. He's the tight end 3, and they're not confident in him. Maybe we'll see him come out and play a little bit more. But I like Ferkser here because I think and even Westbrook Akina, I'm not saying it's going to be crazy, but I think he could see some more production considering that Brown and Julio with the mismatch as far as the coverage goes. But I mean, I'm looking at tight end this week. If I can get 7 points out of a tight end punt, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I just want to say John has quote unquote a gut feeling about Ferkser. Like he really likes Ferkser this week. So you don't know if that's John's gut or if that's, he's getting sources, but I just know the hit rate is always really high when John throws out a random guy like that. Like Ferkser's going to have 440 and 1 and, a productive outing.
One smaller guy that I kind of like a little bit for the 2-game slate, Deontay Foreman. If you're super bearish on Derrick Henry, I mean, there's a chance he gets 40-50% of snaps, and at least for Saturday only, if he turns that into a double-digit fantasy point performance, it's might be worth something. I won't be doing it much, but there might be something there.
I think the other one is Hilliard's a little interesting in scripts where they have to just throw. So I wouldn't mind on the 2-game slates like a Tannehill, Hilliard, and a wide receivers, because I do think they will limit Henry's third down work. But I still think he's going to get the bulk of the early downs.
So when Derrick Henry's been active this year, he's been surrendering 46% of the routes and 57% of the targets to the RB2. So I agree. I think Hilliard is the guy. I don't think when Henry's been active, he's only surrendered less than 5% of the carries. I don't think it's going to be Foreman. I love Foreman, by the way, Jake. So it's not a knock on him at all. I think if he were to come in the game and get hurt, it would be a worst case scenario, because I think that they're looking at Derrick Henry like, we're going to push him, but if he gets hurt, we still have Foreman to bring in and be our early down guy. I think they're going to push with Hilliard. He's obviously the receiving threat there. So I agree. I agree there with John that he's going to get a lot of the receiving work, and that's what Henry's been giving up all year anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, even with especially with this injury, they have even less incentive to play him on those passing downs too. So yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, guys, let's move on. Niners Packers is the late game in Lambeau. Packers are 5.5. It's moved to 6. It opened at 4.5. I got it at 4.5, which I'm pumped about. But over under here is 48. Packers, man, for a team that's got the number 1 seed, it's kind of crazy how much they're getting right here. I mean, they're going to get Bakhtiari back. They're going to get Jaire Alexander back. Devondre Campbell should be back. And the big one is Darius Smith. Darius Smith hasn't played basically all year. I think he's going to play. Now, I don't think he's going to play like a full assortment of snaps like Alexander is.
He doesn't need it.
Yeah, exactly. If he can play 40% of the snaps, like that is fucking massive for the Packers, man. Other couple notes. MVS is doubtful. He's not going to play. He has a back issue. Randall Cobb should be back. He'll play in the slot. And Aaron Jones was full this week, so he should be good to go after a week of rest. Niners are pretty clean. Nick Bosa is kind of questionable. I think he's going to clear protocol though. Fred Warner was a question mark early in the week. I think he's going to play. And Jimmy G's got a shoulder issue on top of the thumb. So, I mean, Jimmy G's sketchy every week, but especially now with this other injury he's got. But man, we got to start with Packers side. I mean, Rodgers has just been unconscious. Wes, I know you said Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the NFL over the last couple of weeks, and I think I agree. But I mean, Rodgers is like neck and neck. Do we see the Packers finally get over the hump here with the Niners? They've struggled against them in the past. And talk through like this spot here with Rodgers and Adams and all these guys, because I've been privy to read your piece already, and I know you like it. So let's walk through the Packers here.
Yeah, so I should qualify that statement. I mean, Burrow is, from a volume perspective, he's been the hottest quarterback, but from an efficiency perspective, what has Rodgers done wrong that you can say anybody's been better? That he hasn't. I'm blown away by this guy, and I don't read too much into the personality stuff. I don't really care about that. All I care about is what he does on the field, and I can't. I just can't I can't get it through my head how good this guy is. But and then as Graham, from reading the last 14 games that Rodgers has played on Lambeau Field with sub-freezing temperatures, 32 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They've won 12, and his numbers are 71% completion percentage, turned the ball over three times in 387 passing plays. That's just ridiculous. And playing in temperatures that most people have a hard time functioning in, and just doing it at he may be the best cold weather quarterback of all time. And so
he agrees. Your pup agrees.
Sorry about that. So those 2 losses, of course, one against Tampa Bay last year, and then in the 2019 playoffs, they lost to San Francisco. in freezing temperatures. So this is a revenge game here for him. But this is going to be a low scoring game, but I think it's more so than saying the Packers are going to have a hard time scoring. Now they've been scoring an average of 31 points compared to 19 for their opponents in these freezing games. It's going to be like -7 to -9 degrees is what it's going to feel like on the field on Lambeau in this a night game. I mean, the NFL almost set San Francisco up here. This is going to be a bad situation. So in the past, I think like 12 years or something, they played 2 games in sub-freezing. I'm not talking about negative degrees. They played 2 games of under 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is not going to be the type of game situation that some of these guys are going to be used to. And, it's going to be tough. The quarterbacks that they've faced in these games, they've turned the ball over more than they throw touchdowns, and they're completing less than 60% of their passes. The ground games haven't been able to get going. 15 touchdowns for the Packers on the ground compared to 5 for their opponents. And the numbers for Davante Adams in these games is ridiculous. I mean, 30 points a game. He's the wide receiver 1, and there's like 5 spots empty behind him.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the most important questions of the slate. For the first time in, 10 weeks, there's a legitimate question over who's the wide receiver 1 of this slate. Sounds like, Wes, you like Adams. I think I have Kupp just I think I have Kupp a hair ahead. But I mean, the argument you can make for Adams is absurd. 29.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 6, hit at least 33.5 in 4 of 6. Against the 49ers, he's absolutely destroyed them. 5 career games, 30.8 DraftKings fantasy points per game. His last 4 postseason games, 27 DraftKings fantasy points per game. San Francisco ranks dead last in fantasy points per game allowed to wide receiver 1s over the last 6 weeks. Second most of schedule adjusted. You take his 6-game hot streak and you boost it by the schedule adjusted number, and we're looking at an expectation of 39.5 fantasy points this week. Just absolutely insane. But San Francisco's secondary is pretty vulnerable everywhere. And they're a bit of a pass funnel too, by the way. Especially in recent weeks, we've seen a massive drop off. Through the first 7 weeks, they were top 5 against outside wide receivers. But over the past 5 and 10 weeks, they rank bottom 5. They've been fringe bottom 12 against slot wide receivers over the past, 5, 10, 19 weeks of the season. And they've given up big numbers to some of the more competent slots. I love Allen Lazard. Really, really, really love him this week with MVS out. You've seen 21% of his targets come on deep passes for the last 7 weeks of the season. That's like Jamar Chase, Mike Williams type numbers. San Francisco is also the worst defense against the deep ball. That's also big for Adams, who, by the way, ranks top 6 in yards gained on deep passes this year. And then Randall Cobb, he is legitimately in play as a punt. He has some upside. He has 2 multi-touchdown games. In his last game, he had 4 catches for 95 yards and a score in less than 2 full quarters of work. Lazard, by the way, his last game, a meaningless week 18, less than 2 full quarters of work, just 17 routes, had 5 catches, 75 yards, and 2 scores. He hit at least 70 yards in 3 of his last 5 games. MVS played in 4 of those. So he wasn't on his typical 76% route share when MVS is out. So Johnny always argues that one of the best one of the best things about Aaron Rodgers is you don't ever really need to play him. You just play Adams and soak up all those fantasy points, then play a different stack. But this is one of those rare weeks where the matchup is so attractive and enticing. I really like Rodgers dub stacks, and with Lazard so cheap on DraftKings, with Cobb so cheap, I think Rodgers dub stacks are way high on my list of favorite stacks of the week.
Yeah, Degura too. I mean, not that he's a guy you love, but he's really inexpensive. Yeah, I think Rodgers is a guy that on when we would get 16 game slates and whatnot, he would rarely crack like your top 10 in points per dollar or that kind of thing. And you could just play Adams. But when you get into the playoffs too, where he's also, Rodgers, we say we don't want to get into personality, but Rodgers being full of himself does play into it a little bit when it gets into the red zone because he wants the touchdowns. So I do think there's also that a little bit where you're more likely to get multiple passing touchdowns from Rodgers in playoff games than in the regular season. So yeah, I'm with you, Scott. And I think Rodgers will be, I think, less popular than Burrow. A lot of the ownership projections have it the other way, but I don't buy it right now. And so I think it's also his pieces are cheaper than Burrow. So that's kind of what I like on the Rodgers side. And then I think Aaron Jones is a little interesting too. And you can pair him with Rodgers because if they go in the passing route against the 49ers, we could see him. And I also think we see a little more Aaron Jones in the playoffs than we saw towards the end of the season because he still is the starter. So I think he could push for like 12 or 15 carries instead of some of those lower games, which is pretty interesting too.
Let's pick up the Cup versus Adams debate because I'm willing to be swayed, but let's pick that back up.
Let me go back to that section. The Rams have just been more balanced over the last month or so. We've seen,
I don't know about that.
We saw a game where Higbee out targeted Cup twice in the last month. There's a game where Beckham got just as many targets. He hasn't had 10 plus targets in over 3 weeks. So I think, he
had a 39% target share last week.
Yeah, the issue with Beckham this week, though, he's going to play a lot of his snaps on Jamel Dean's side, and that's not good for OBJ. That's very bad. I don't think Stafford's gonna. And that was the big thing about that game when they played Tampa Bay early in the year. Jamel Dean only played 12 snaps, not coverage snaps. He only played 12 snaps total, and he's gonna be healthy in this game. That's gonna change the rotation a little bit, or at least where Stafford's gonna feel comfortable throwing the ball, at least unless he wants to continue. With throwing 7 interceptions over his last 4 games, and so there's that. Here, I want to throw this one stat about Davante Adams. It's mostly unnecessary, but I want to throw it out anyway. In those 14 games, he has 123 receptions. The wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 for his opponents have 126.
One more time.
So he has 123 receptions, Davante Adams, in those 14 sub-freezing games. And his opponents, the wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 combined, have 126.
Oh, wow. Let's pick up the covers Adams debate again in the Rams section because I want to get your thoughts on Sean Murphy bunting because you were on that way before anyone else. And I don't know. I'm showing Jamel Dean as a favorable matchup, but it seems like you're not. So we can pick that up later.
Yeah.
Jake, do you agree with Johnny's take on Aaron Jones, or do you think we're going to go back to the near even, arguably more in AJ Dillon's favor, probably by XFP? Do you like Aaron Jones, or do you think it's going to go back to a committee approach?
Yeah, I like Aaron Jones quite a bit as a tournament play and in Rodgers stacks. So from weeks 14 through 17, him and AJ Dillon had basically identical workloads. By XFP, it was 11.8 points per game for Jones and 10.8 for Dillon. But in the first 10 weeks of the season, Jones averaged like 16.3 XFP per game, and Dillon was somewhere in like the 9-10 range. And I think that's probably what we end up going back to this week. So, and I think Jones will go under owned, especially relative to Henry, Fournette, and probably even a Mixon too. I like Jones. The only risk is, like Johnny said, Aaron Rodgers could just give himself all the touchdowns, and Davante Adams could soak up all the red zone and end zone targets, and in which case, neither Jones or Dillon really has any chance of getting there.
Aaron Jones had 3 receiving touchdowns in week 2?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean he's got 3 other touchdowns, receiving touchdowns in 3 other games too. But I was going to mention to the point on Aaron Jones, like his touchdown equity is significantly lower now. I mean, the sample is large enough to say like he's lost the goal line back role to Dylan. Last 8 games played together, Dylan has 10 goal line carries inside the 5. Jones has just 4. So, yeah, I mean the touchdown equity you're hoping for is now, with him as a pass catcher, which he can certainly do. I mean, even playing less than 100% his last 2 games, he's got 6 targets in back-to-back, 5 catches in back-to-back. So, yeah, he's definitely live for Rodgers stacks. But I will say I do think his touchdown equity is probably a little bit dinged with Dylan involved way more at the goal line now. I hope the Packers just come out and sling it, man. Niners' run defense has been really good as of late. And I certainly think, to build a lead, I think Rodgers is going to want to come out and throw it here. Let's flip it to the Niners side. And I mean, pass catcher wise, it's we know the 3, but Wes, what do you think about Ayuk, Debo, and Kittle here?
So yeah, I'm not big on Ayuk this week. He's going to be playing against my boy Rasul Douglas, and there's only a handful of guys that have been better this year. His targeted passer rating is I think it's 4th, and it's just a hair, a few incompletions or maybe an interception away from being below spike levels. And so yeah, I've got issues there. And then looks like Jair is going to play, and with him back on the field, I don't see Stokes or Douglas taking a seat. They played just too many snaps on the outside this year. I don't think they're going to want to mess with that flow. I think it's going to be Shannon Sullivan that's going to take a seat. And before Kevin King, early in the year, before they inserted Eric Stokes into the lineup as a starter, they had Kevin King as a starter, and he went down, and Jair. So they wanted to move him into that star position inside, and I think that's where they're going to want to keep him coming out in this game. Excuse me.
Jari on the inside or no?
Alexander on the inside. I think he's going to replace Shannon Sullivan. They're going to keep Stokes and Douglas on the outside. I mean, why not? They're playing so well. This has been Stokes is one of the top rookie corners in the NFL. He's this is exactly what they drafted him for. So they moved Jair. So when he's in that star position, though, Scott, he could move to the outside. It depends on the situation. And and then we're talking about a team that plays predominantly zone. I mean, to the point where we'll only see a handful of man snaps in this game. So that really plays into what the 49ers want to do. They're going to have Deebo Samuel, they're going to have Brandon Ayuk. They move a lot. They move to the inside a lot. Plus consider Deebo. He plays a lot of snaps in the backfield. You don't want guys like Rasul Douglas chasing after Samuel into the backfield. That's not what you want. You don't want him in run defense. You want him on the outside defending the pass on every play. And that's an area of Jair's game where he's nasty. This kid is nasty. When he tackles, he puts a lick on people. There's a reason that he's built up this reputation so quickly. He's an all-around player. He's coming off the injury, so that is something to consider. And I have no way of predicting how they want to use him in that. But it's just like I said with Henry. I don't think he's playing in this game unless he's 100%. Because this team, they're thinking Super Bowl. There's no way they're gonna put a liability onto the field. I think they're gonna let Jair just take it and go, and I think it's gonna be on the inside. So we're gonna see the receivers going up against everybody. But the one guy I love in this matchup, though, receiver for the 49ers is George Kittle. I know he's only averaging 4.8 points over his last 4 games. Been an afterthought. I actually love that because we're going to come into this game. Nobody's going to be, that excited about him. But this is a matchup where I think he could go nuclear because of the way that the corner situation is going to shake out with Jair.
So why does Rasul Douglas concern you with Ayuk when he's running 39% of his routes from the left and 33% from the right? It seems like he's going to have a near even mixture of both perimeter cornerbacks.
because it's not actually that low. Instead of looking at just how many snaps that Douglas will play him on the outside, I'm looking at the snaps that he's going to play on that side of the field. Because look, the Packers are not playing man to man. They're playing a zone. So just because a guy lines up on the inside, he may turn his route to the outside. Guess what? He's right there with Rasul. That number is actually a little bit higher than 50% when you include the number of snaps that he's going to be on that side of the field. Anything that is that high concerns me. When you're playing against a guy with top 5 coverage metrics.
Yeah,
if it was 30%, yeah, I would agree with you.
That's a great point. Just because following Deebo Samuel's role change from wide receiver to wide back, Ayuk has seen significantly more volume and production, more yards per game than Stephon Diggs since week 11. I didn't really have him too highly overall, but the matchup was one thing I really couldn't nail down. So I appreciate you shedding some light there. Johnny, you were going to say something?
Yeah. So, everyone's always joked for, the last however many years that Kittle plays offensive tackle or whatever. And over the last few weeks, he's run a lot of routes. And so what I've been wondering is, it's like, do you remember there? I don't remember what season it was, but it was like Gronk ran like a million routes, but like every route he was running, he was doing some type of pass. Right. So is that what's going on with Kittle, or is Garoppolo just not throwing him the ball?
I don't know. PFF doesn't, factor in that difference.
Yeah, PFF's terrible now. You can't find anything anywhere. But that's why I'm asking you.
Which is why I'm asking Wes. Wes, what have you seen on tape?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything different than what we've seen from Kittle, other than a game script. I think if you go back to the Cincinnati game's tight. I think they did detach him more there in the second half, just to free him up. And what do you think is going to happen in this game? Do you think they're gonna try to run the ball in -7 degrees when they're down by a double digits, or do you think they're gonna detach Kittle and try to get him the ball? I don't think they're gonna have a choice here. I in the last couple of games,
don't underestimate Shanahan's ability to sniff.
Oh no,
farts,
you're exactly right.
That's right.
I don't underestimate any NFL team. You go week to week, and I'm just blown away by some of these results, when everything just pointed to one direction and then it goes the other. No, I get it. I do. I'm not saying anything's an absolute. I'm just trying to play out a scenario in my mind where, I'm looking at the numbers for Green Bay and what they've done at home and in these weather conditions, and I'm saying, I'm thinking to myself, this is a bad situation that the 49ers are coming into. And I think it's one where I don't think we're going to see as crafty of a Kyle Shanahan as we saw the past few games when they're playing against a Dallas offense that just can't find an identity. And then I don't think, or the Rams, which they haven't played the 49ers very well. So I don't think it's going to be the case here with the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is just too good. He's not going to come out and struggle passing the ball like Dak Prescott did last week. He's going to come out and he's going to start shredding and slinging, and the 49ers, they're going to have to keep up.
Yeah, that's the buried lead here. Is I don't think the 49ers show up. Jimmy Garoppolo, easily the worst QB of the slate, the worst QB play of the slate. And now, to make matters worse, in addition to a torn ligament in his throwing thumb, he added a sprained shoulder to his list of injuries. And he was not good in the second half of last week's game. Threw for 39 yards on 11 passes. Through 2 quarters.
He almost brought Dallas back into that game, like single-handedly. It was bad.
Right.
Can't wait for Trey Lance to win someone a showdown Millie on Sunday.
Cecil Lammey, who is really well connected, Denver beat reporter, said his sources have been whispering that Trey Lance is likely to come in for a drive or two. Have some Trey Lance packages this week.
Yeah. So on that, I agree with you that you can't play Jimmy Garoppolo in DFS. I mean, there's so many ways that Shanahan gets the playmakers the ball as rushers. I mean, we've seen George Kittle has had rushing touchdowns, and that's the kind of stuff they do.
Yeah, Kittle had a nice game on the ground the last time he played the Packers too. I think he got like an end around too. So I mean,
right,
that's live as well.
Yeah, so you just like the odds that you get sniped from a touchdown with Garoppolo is so high that I'm with you, Scott. I would just exclude him. But I'm with Wes that I think Kittle is a very underrated play on the main slate. He's one of the few guys who has a 35-point ceiling, and I think his ceiling at the same price as Ayuk on DraftKings is much higher. Obviously, the floor is much lower, and Ayuk's floor is much better. But when we're playing in the Millie Maker, we're not looking to get 14 points, which I think is what Ayuk gets you, a lot of the time. We want 25 plus. And so I think Kittle is a guy that, that's able to do that. And people aren't flexing tight ends because the tight ends have been so wonky in the playoffs that I think, Kittle, Gronk, Kelsey have just as good a ceilings as a lot of these wide receivers. So I'm fine, playing multiple tight ends.
Yeah, I love playoff football just because we could see an end around from Kittle. I love seeing teams just pulling out every one of their tricks. I hate when you see an offense and they're just like, no, we don't want to do that right now. We're showing too much. I just love when teams just go into it and just throw everything they have at each other.
Yeah, Niners are going to have to, man. Short week going into Lambeau. They're going to have to. Shanahan's going to have to empty the play sheet here for sure. Jake, I want to get your thoughts on Elijah Mitchell here. I know the consensus, I guess, on this stream is the Packers are going to build a lead here, and Niners are going to have to throw more. But I mean, this is on paper, this is a really good spot for Mitchell.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Mitchell just has like an absolutely incredible touch floor. He's had at least 21 touches in each of his last 6 games, I believe. But yeah, the tricky part is that he's not at all involved in a receiver. I mean, we saw last week they were putting in use check on third downs. And then his other issue is that Deebo Samuel is stealing, roughly 40% of, his goal line and red zone work. Plus, with negative game script, we would have to assume that the 49ers, will have to throw, and that means Mitchell is off the field. So I don't know. He's kind of like a fringe cash guy just based on his touch floor, but it's hard to really like him there. I do think he has a lot of merits as a contrarian play in tournaments, especially stacked with the 49ers defense, in case Green Bay somehow flops, but that's just hard to foresee. And then also one note I had on Johnny's statement that tight end in the flex isn't super popular for these playoff slates is that actually on the 3-game Sunday slate last week, 47% of lineups used a tight end in the flex compared to 35% using a receiver and 16% using a running back. So tight end in the flex may not be as sneaky as we initially think with the slate.
I'd like to know how many of those actually cashed out though.
The double tight end was like the stone nuts over the weekend because most of the people who did double tight end ended up with, or at least a lot of them ended up with Kelsey, and he just crushed.
Yeah, and Uzoma.
Yeah, well, and Waller wasn't bad either. So
yeah.
Any other kind of smaller plays in this game? You guys are on?
I just I'll note on the 2-game and on the showdown, I think use check in your builds where San Francisco just sort of gets dusted is in play. In the playoffs, they tend to use him a little bit more in that sort of pass catching running back role. And in like your same game parlays for the weekend, I think his receiving props they're pretty low, and generally he gets a little more work in the playoffs. But on Mitchell, I think like in game stacks, if you have like a Rodgers stack, you should be excluding Mitchell from those because if Mitchell scores 25 or 30, this game probably sucks.
Yep. Yeah. It either sucks or the Packers just completely flop. So I'm with you on that.
One guy I wanted to mention who's also live for at least Showdown's probably the 2-game slate too is Mercedes Lewis. One interesting note: he sees way worse volume and route share than Josiah DeGuara, but he's had the exact same touchdown expectation roughly over their last 5 games. 1.7 expected TDs for DeGuara compared to 1.6 for Lewis. So he's live to at least fall into the end zone, but it's thin.
Yeah, and Juwan Jennings, who's been a staple of their third down passing attack in recent weeks, had that big week 18. Greg Cassell said he thinks he's really interesting this week in that slot matchup. And I hate to disagree with Greg, but I'm not really on it. There's a couple of other similarly priced punts I like a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree, Scott. I don't think Jennings is going to do it in this game because, I mean, best case scenario, he gets Shannon Sullivan, and worst case, he gets Jair. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Plus, Devondre Campbell has been the second best coverage linebacker in the game this year. So I just don't see a scenario where Juwan Jennings finds an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's only in play for the 2-game slate, like in stacks. I wouldn't play him on the main.
All righty, let's move it on to Sunday here, guys. Bucks 3-point favorites. Over-under is 49, 48 and a half, where depending on where you're looking. Obviously, the big thing we're watching in this game is the offensive line issues for both sides. Andrew Whitworth is not going to play for the Rams here, which is huge. I think Noteboom is going to switch over. I'm waiting on official word on that. Speaking of official word, we're also waiting on what the deal is with Leonard Fournette. They have to bring him up tomorrow if he's going to play. So we'll see on Fournette tomorrow. We won't have any word until then. Rojo's not going to play. I mean, I haven't heard shit about him. Bucks side still, Brashad Perriman's not going to play. He has an ab issue, so their 3 wide receiver set will be Evans, Tyler Johnson, and Cyril Grayson. Cyril Grayson
maybe
this week. Looks like. I think he's going to play.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of good buzz, which is huge because Grayson
he practiced today, but he missed yesterday and today, the day before.
He practiced yesterday too, but it wasn't very much. He didn't do much.
The fact he's even gotten back-to-back practices is really good. So I'll be surprised.
Otherwise, it's Scotty Miller, then Jalen Darden, and maybe John Brown on the practice squad.
Dude, Scotty Miller is better than Tyler Johnson. I mean, let's get Tyler Johnson off the field.
You know what I was thinking about this morning, half awake, is a Jalen Ramsey narrative that he just gets dusted by the goofiest white wide receivers. And so I just had this vision of Scotty Miller burning him for 2 deep touchdowns, goes 3 for 83 and 2 scores. And, the who is it? The safety or the linebacker Ramsey got into a fight with comes over to him on the sideline and just goes, "Bro, you just got burnt by some dude named Scotty." And so I just had that vision so crystal clear in my mind. I wonder if it's prophetic. We'll see.
Well, Scotty Miller's got to run more than 8 routes for that to happen, but he could go 8 for 1. He could go 8 for 101 on those routes. It's possible.
Yeah.
Other note, real quick on this game, injury note wise, guys, is Tristan Wirfs. He's dealing with a really bad high ankle sprain. I think they're going to get Jensen, but Wirfs not playing or being extremely limited worries me about Gronk. Because if Wirfs isn't going to play or is limited, they'll just leave Gronk in on
that's a great point.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, I really liked Gronk coming into this game because Wes, I want to get your thoughts on this. Well, let's start here. Like Jalen Ramsey, Wes, you were all over this early in the year. Ramsey was a slot corner, kind of playing in that like joker position, playing some linebacker, playing in the slot, playing in the box. That's completely switched the last 4 or 5 weeks. Ramsey has been strictly outside. Well, not strictly, but like 75% outside of his snaps. What do we think Ramsey's going to do here? Because he hasn't shouted hardly at all this year, if at all.
We don't need him to shadow because of how much Mike Evans plays on one side of the field. And then again, don't just say, Evans is running this many routes on the outside on this side because he's going up against the cover 3, cover 4, cover 6 rotation. So we're not going to see any man. I mean, like the second lowest rated man in the NFL. So even if he runs a route on that side of the field, he's going to be on Ramsey's side still. So it's going to be enough snaps to matter. The situation is that they're gonna see that they're gonna start moving Evans away from Ramsey, but the problem is if he starts producing, we saw with when they played the Packers, Ramsey will kick into a into shadow mode if somebody starts putting up numbers. Adams he was shredding. He kept motioning away from Ramsey. Ramsey's putting his arms up on the field, looking at him like, "Come on, man, come at me," but they kept motioning him away from Ramsey. So when he started putting up numbers, they put Ramsey on him and he shut him down. Not to say that he's going to shut down Evans here, but I'm not excited about Evans. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, the Bucks did a great job. Hats off to them. They did a great job last week with Evans. I mean, they moved him around like crazy to get him away from Slay. So that's definitely going to be what they have to do here. But like you mentioned, Ramsey will match too. But the thing is if Wirfs doesn't play, I'm concerned about Gronk because we've seen plenty of times with Brady and Gronk that Gronk will just stay in and basically play 6 offensive line for this guy. And I mean, when you got Von Miller running after you, 25, 30 times a game, that's not great. So we'll see on Wirfs, but that's for me, that's really like the key to this Bucks offense is if Wirfs can go and his effectiveness, if he can go this week. But I mean, we saw it last week, Wes, we saw last week, like, Brady just killed the Eagles on short passes. And, if they're going to take a repeat of that game plan, how do you think that works here with the short passing game? Like who benefits most from that?
Well, it depends on what. So the ground game is gonna dictate everything. If they're able to move the ball on the ground, they're gonna force that cover 4 onto the field, and that's when Brady's gonna start killing them because. Read safeties. You don't want to put one of other than cover 3, cover 0. Cover 4 is a vulnerable defense against the pass, especially against the go. And so if they can force the Rams into their cover 4, it's going to be a bad situation for the Rams. But and it does concern me, the Fournette situation. But to your point about one thing about the short passing game, man, Perryman, and I'm glad he's out because he looked awful last week. I mean, it was. I mean, Brady was notably pissed off. Notably pissed off because
he was with Tyler Johnson too, though.
Yeah, no, Tyler Johnson was just as bad. I just can't. If they get Cyber Grayson back here, it's gonna be huge. And then another guy I really like in this game is Cameron Brate, and especially if Wirfs is out. I think that if Wirfs is out, and even if they keep Gronk in to block 5% more, and it just equates to one extra target for Brate. Like I said, I want 7 points on my punts. If I get 7 points out of Cameron Brate, I'm going to take that to the bank. I'll love that right there and devote my money elsewhere.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Brate, Wes, because I was actually thinking about this morning, just kind of going through the notes more of this game. Like, I wonder if they use 12 more with Perriman out, with Tyler Johnson stinking. If they get Grayson back, I mean, they could play 12 with Gronk and Brate and then just have Evans and Grayson outside. I mean, I know they've been.
It reminds me of one year with the Patriots. I forget what receivers they were using, but they had Edelman got hurt and they had a bunch of young receivers in the first couple of games. I mean, Brady was pissed on the field, just like throwing fits, yelling at his receivers because they just didn't know what they were doing. He threw interceptions. He ended up turning that season around, throwing for like 28 touchdowns or something. And I mean, had a great year because he made changes in the offense. He didn't let the same guys stay in the rotation. So I wouldn't be surprised one bit if we see some big changes, and 12 personnel would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it was that 18 year. Edelman missed a couple games, and they had like nothing at receivers, like Hogan and Dorsett.
Yeah,
I think they had CPAT on that team too. I think. But yeah, I think Bucks, they're gonna have to adjust here, and like you mentioned, we gotta see on Fournette. That's really the big thing in this game. Scott, you wanted to bring back up the Cooper Cup debate, so let's do it.
Just to finish off on the Buccaneers. Yeah, the Wirfs injury is also really big for Brady. I didn't think he played particularly well with him out of the lineup. We're teasing apart the minutia of the matchups with regard to Gronkowski and Evans, but I still think it's just going to be the Evans and Gronkowski show, and we've seen that over the last 3 weeks. They combine for a 53% yardage share. The next closest receivers at 10%. So I really do think this offense is going to funnel through those two receivers matchups. Everything else sort of be damned. And they've both been phenomenal in recent weeks. Tyler Johnson, the one thing I'll say for him is he was the clear wide receiver 2 last week. And this was his second consecutive bottom 5 matchup against a defense that ranked top 5 against slot wide receivers. I really liked your argument for Cyril Grayson, Wes. And yeah, so Cooper Kupp, let's talk about the matchup. So you were on this before anyone else, Wes, which was that Tampa Bay's defense was significantly worse with Sean Murphy-Bunting, their starting slot corner, in the lineup. And just how drastically different this defense has been as opposed to with Ross Cockrell was really shocking. So since his return in week 11, Murphy-Bunting has given up the second most yards and the second most fantasy points of any cornerback, not just slot cornerbacks. And Tampa Bay ranks bottom 3 in receptions and fantasy points allowed to opposing slot wide receivers. When Kupp first faced them and he went absolutely nuclear, this was without Sean Murphy-Bunting. So arguably the matchup is even better now. You said Jamel Dean was a matchup that concerned you, but I didn't see it that case. I saw it as so Jamel Dean on the left side of the field. The Buccaneers ranked bottom 10 in fantasy points per game to left wide receivers, and then Carlton Davis, his side of the field, giving up ranking top 10 in fantasy points per game to right wide receivers. So I don't know. Can you shed some clarity on the specific cornerbacks in this matchup?
Well, we're not going to see any type of a shadow. It's going to be, they're going to play
Right.
both sides. They're going to plant to either side, and Jamel Dean's going to be on the right. Davis going to be on the left. And
on the right facing the left wide receiver, on the left facing the right wide receiver.
Exactly. And yeah, another thing I wanted to point out is we're not only going to see Cockrell on Cooper Kupp here, we're also going to see Mike Edwards. He's going to play a lot of nickel but mostly dime. Yeah, they've been putting 3 safeties on the field quite a bit. So especially with Sean Murphy-Bunting on the sideline. But as far as
Murphy-Bunting's not playing.
He didn't play last game, no, and I don't think he's going to play this week either. I don't have.
Was that a benching?
It's not good. Let's see, out of 36 qualified slot corners, he's given up the 35th most yards per coverage snap. He
practiced on Friday though, so I was expecting him to play. He was limited on Thursday.
Yeah, looks like Thursday and Friday practice.
So if he plays, that's a top 5 matchup for Kupp, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
arguably
I just can't imagine them playing him over Cockrell, but we'll see.
That's what you've done all year, though.
It doesn't make any sense, though, is what I'm saying. But I don't know why they don't just convert Edwards into that spot, because he's been a top 3 guy there. So it's concerning. But Jamel Dean, I mean, he's a top 5 guy. If you've got it. Absolutely. This guy's
because his side of the field is giving up a lot of production, but maybe that's one of those things where the PFF stats, it doesn't dive into it as much as you are.
No, it's so you got to remember that the alignment percentages that you're looking at are looking at where the receiver lines up at first. And so if the guy carries a crossing route to the other side of the field, it's going to go onto that side. But as far as the coverage numbers for Jamel Dean, which, that's all we can really, that I think it's important to keep it limited to that. If they're just going to run the guy to the other side of the field every single time, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. You know what I mean? I've got to look at where the guy's lining up and where, or excuse me, where he's attacking Jamel Dean. And so if he attacks Jamel Dean's zone, we're talking about a top 5, top 6 guy. If he's attacking the other side of the field, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that.
Right. This is why I hate going into the live stream not having read your articles. Usually that doesn't happen. All right. So for the case of our Kupp v. Adams argument, I'll let Johnny and everyone else chime in a second. Assume Sean Murphy-Bunting is the starting slot cornerback. Cooper Kupp, the best fantasy wide receiver season in NFL history, massive power law player, even relative to Davante Adams, though obviously you can make a great argument for him. Assume Sean Murphy-Bunting is the starting slot cornerback. Who do you have and how close is
it? Who do I have as my wide receiver 1?
Yeah.
It's not even close. It's Davante Adams is my
It's
guy.
still Adams.
It's still Adams. I don't see anybody on the. So Davante, we already have their first matchup of the season where Davante Adams shredded this 49ers defense, and that was with Emmanuel Moseley on the field. We're not talking about after he was injured. We're talking about when he's on the field. They were healthier then than they are now, and there's not a scenario that you can okay. So the big problem for like I said, Jamel Dean wasn't on the field when Cooper Kupp put up those numbers and was it week 2. So I mean I just week 3 or something like that. I can't remember. I'm not saying that he's going to get shut down. No. I think he's gonna put up 20 plus. I think that's a lock. But I think Adams is the guy that's got the 35, maybe 40 point potential in this matchup because there's nothing that the 49ers are going to be able to throw at Adams to stop him. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got like 17 targets or something.
Yeah. I mean, the spot is great for Kupp too, though. I mean, the question I have, at least from like the Bucs side defensively, is like, do they blitz Stafford? So the Bucs blitzed at the highest rate in the NFL this year, 41%. When these two teams met back in week 3, Todd Bowles blitzed Stafford 34% of the time. That was like the 4th, 5th highest rate on the week. Stafford is the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz. He led all quarterbacks in fantasy points per pass attempt, was like top 5 in YPA. And Kupp led all receivers like by a mile in targets against the blitz. So if the Bucs are going to come out and be aggressive here, I mean, Kupp, I know it's been a rough couple of weeks, but I mean, I think Adams definitely has the higher ceiling, Wes, to your point. But I mean, Kupp this is still an amazing spot. It doesn't really even matter who covers them in those situations, because if you leave, one fewer guy over the middle, it's such a good spot. But Wes, I know it's kind of a loaded question, but you think the Bucs stay aggressive here? What have you seen with just the everything that you pull, like, or do you think they keep blitzing and stay aggressive here? Or do you think Bowles just drops back and plays more coverage?
I saw Jason Pierre-Paul was on the injury report. I assume he's taken off.
Yeah, he played last week too. He's not been good this year, for what it's worth.
No, but my point is I think if with Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul on the field, I think that they won't have to blitz as much. And we're just a bunch of fantasy analysts looking at this matchup, and don't think that the Buccaneers aren't looking at these same numbers and saying this guy's done this against the blitz and blah blah blah. I'm not saying that they're not going to blitz. I think they will. I think we're going to see the same defense from the Buccaneers. I think that with both of their big guys on the edge, maybe they won't have to blitz as much, but it's really just a coin flip of determining whether they're going to do that or not.
Yeah, Shaq Barrett and Levante David got back last week, which is like, to your point, huge. You get with their pass rush and also their run defense too.
Because they don't have to blitz with those two guys. I mean, it's basically the equivalent of a similar pass rush.
Yeah. Jake, want to get your thoughts here on this Rams backfield. I mean, it was kind of crazy to watch Akers take over in front of our eyes last week. I mean, just anecdotally, I mean, I thought he had about the same amount of burst that he did back in his Florida State days, which is just crazy considering he's, the injury he just had. But yeah, Rams backfield, tough spot. But what are your thoughts here on Akers?
Yeah. So in Akers' first game back from a torn Achilles, 8 total touches, 26% snap share, 7.1 XFP. And then the next week that basically doubled, 53% snap share, 15.8 XFP, and 18 total touches. So I mean, I think I don't really think Michelle's in play much at all unless you're trying to get, just really weird for ownership purposes. Um, but I do think there's a real chance that Akers, becomes like a true bell cow this week. Cause I definitely agree with what you said, Graham. I mean, he looked good.
Yeah.
Which was,
Crazy.
I mean, just like shocking. Yeah. Like a true medical miracle. And if he hits, 75%, 80% of snaps and the Rams win this game, I mean, he's going to be up there when it comes to, running back scores. So um, I really, the matchup is brutal. That's the biggest issue, is that teams are petrified of running on Tampa Bay. They have the fewest rush attempts against by a significant margin. They let up, bottom 5 yards per carry. So, the Rams probably go pass heavy here, but in the event they win, I mean, I can definitely see Akers getting there. But yeah, it's hard to like him, like within the context of, say, like Brady stacks.
Yeah, the thing that interests me most about Akers is because, I mean, we've been shying away from Bucks guys against running backs against the Bucks all year. The thing that interests me the most is like Akers is so much better of a pass catcher than Michelle. I mean, we saw it last week with that chunk play. He should have had another one, but he never never saw the ball on a wheel route. Ran more routes than Michelle. And I mean, as long as he's looking good and feeling good in game, like he's going to be their passing down back. I think that's ideally, he just gets
Henderson should be back too. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Johnny, I wonder how much he plays though, man. Like maybe he replaces Michelle. I don't know.
It's enough uncertainty to worry me a little bit about. I think Akers will be really popular.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Michelle wasn't Michelle still the goal line back last
week?
They
had one play inside the 5 where they ran it and he got it.
Yeah. That's what I want. I know what I want Akers to be this weekend. I just don't know if we get it or not.
Yeah, I feel you. I wonder if Henderson's just like strictly like he's coming off a knee injury, like I hear you though. There's enough uncertainty for sure. But
I mean, if we think Akers is going to be really popular, that makes Stafford stacks a bit more interesting. Because after Jimmy G, I mean, he'll probably be the lowest owned QB.
Yeah, I really like Stafford this week.
Yeah, I think I do too.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have to chuck it. They'll get back to their extreme pass heavy ways. Any thoughts on Beckham here? I mean, he's completely taken over Van Jefferson. I know Jefferson still gets some deep downfield targets, but Wes, what are your thoughts here on OBJ? I know you weren't super crazy about the matchup, but volume's been definitely not so bad as of late.
Yeah, you guys keep coming back to me with these Jamel Dean questions, and I don't like it. I don't think it's a situation that's going to play out very well for him. He had the matchup last week, and he almost had that second touchdown. He had another big one called back on a hold, and but it was a decent performance. Could have been so much better against Arizona.
Yeah.
I don't see that this week. I don't see it happening. Dean is he's pimp, man, and he's over his last 7 games. His assignments, the guys that have attacked his zone on his side of the field have averaged 2.4 receptions and 21.9 yards per game, 0 touchdowns.
Seems pretty good. All right.
He's allowed 1 touchdown this year in week 1.
Damn. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're stacking Stafford and you don't like it with Akers, you obviously bring it with Cup. So who's the second guy, Johnny, that you'd want to stack up Stafford with if you're not using OBJ?
It's probably Higbee.
Yeah.
And while Beckham's matchup isn't good, and like I'm not stoked about Beckham as a one-off play. He is like heavily used inside the 5. He's had like a little bit of a sort of like goal line wide receiver type role. So I do, if Stafford throws 4 touchdowns, Beckham probably scores.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this game here? We'll move on. Bills Chiefs. Nope. All right. Bills Chiefs. Game of the week. Game of the year. Probably be a better game than the Super Bowl, honestly. Chiefs are getting 2. It opened at 2.5. It kind of bounced down to 1.5. It's bouncing around between there and 2 right now. Over under is 55, 45.5. I saw a tweet. I don't think Darrell Williams is going to play, but it's trending like CH is going to be back. So that's obviously something we're going to have to track tomorrow as well, along with Fournette. So we'll see on that front. Only other note I have on the Chiefs is Tyreek Hill was full practice to start the week. They took him off the injury report going into their game last week against the Steelers, but I mean, he's still, for my money, he's still not right. Maybe he's getting closer to 100%, but we'll see. Bills, they're good, completely clean. Mario Addison is the only player they have on their injury report, which is kind of amazing. So they're completely clean coming in this game. But man, all of the things in this game are working. Let's start with the Bills. Johnny, I think you and I have kind of both been lockstep on this. I mean, Josh Allen has the highest ceiling of any quarterback on any slate. If it's a 12 game, 16 game, whatever. I mean, even especially this week, right? I mean, if the Bills are going to win here, what's up?
Highest floor too.
Oh yeah. I mean, Bills are going to win here, which I want to get your guys' thoughts on. We should pick this game at the end here, but I mean, even if the Bills lose, I mean, Allen has a pathway to 35 here. So let's talk through Bills. Johnny, what are your thoughts on Allen? And he'll end up being the highest owned quarterback on the slate, right?
Yeah, I think him and Mahomes will be pretty close. I just think people are just going to stack this game as, the most obvious stack. And I do think, as much as I like Allen, we talk about it like every week. I feel like he's so hard to stack because, Diggs is generally the best play on the slate, but you pay for it. And Diggs rarely beats other wide receivers in his price ranges. I
think he's a bad play. I think he's a value trap. We have him top 3. Every site has him top 3.
Right.
And he's a value trap.
Right. So, I think Tyreek Hill is a better play than Stephon Diggs, same price on DraftKings. I think, Mike Evans at lower ownership at a similar price is probably a better play in terms of ownership. But I still think Josh Allen's the best QB play on the slate. So we talked about this last week, and I'll say it again. I like the idea of playing Allen and then building mini stacks from other games and using Chiefs, maybe Allen with just one of the cheaper wide receivers. So I'm not going out of my way to, play Josh Allen triple stacks or anything like that. But I will have he'll be my highest owned quarterback.
I think if you're an MME guy, especially, really sprinkle in those cheaper wide receivers, because it feels like with all of them, Diggs included, you're just praying your guy is the guy who scores multiple touchdowns. And that's not something you could ever really predict. But like, why are you paying for that with Diggs, who ranks behind by a margin Ayuk in yardage, market share, target share, yards per game since week 11? When these guys have the same, upside, or obviously behind Diggs, but like decent odds of hitting, and they're so much cheaper that it's the upside can really go a long way in helping you secure a tournament win.
And Diggs will easily be the highest owned wide receiver paired with Allen for sure.
Right.
Oh yeah. Because I mean, that's everybody's logical pathway is to Diggs. I gotta say, on the low end of these Bills guys, I think Isaiah McKenzie's by far my favorite.
Yes.
ran more routes than Cole Beasley last week. Beasley's been completely demoted. Also got 3 carries in that game too. And I mean, he's not going to play a full-time role, but he's the cheapest of the guys. And he also has, I mean, he's got 20 plus yard gain potential. So I think he's my favorite. If he's going to play slot over Beasley, like there's some really nice value with that. So I like McKenzie, and then probably Davis, then Sanders, then Beasley. But yeah, McKenzie's, I think, head and shoulders above the other cheap Bills guys.
Yeah, so I'll just disagree with that. I significantly prefer Gabriel Davis, 62% route share versus McKenzie's 41% last week. And in games over the last 6 games with Sanders, McKenzie, and Davis all active, Davis 10.6 fantasy points per game, Sanders 6.5, McKenzie 3.6. McKenzie had that big game against New England with Gabriel Davis out, but has really done absolutely nothing beyond that. 1 game over 12 yards that came last week. Sanders last 7 games, only 1 with 30. That was last week with 36. And then, but over his last 8 games, Davis, playing behind Emmanuel Sanders, now ahead of Emmanuel Sanders. He averaged 17.1 fantasy points per game in his top 50% of games. So there's good upside there. But like we debated with John a couple hours ago with the projections, and he was just like, listen, like this situation is so murky. Like all these guys are just going to be even. And again, it just feels like you play a guy and you pray he gets the touchdown. And so that's what it looks like to me.
The thing I would say though is you mentioned he only went over 12 yards once, but what he could have done last week if it wasn't a 47-17 blowout, he was moving the ball at will on his touches. He was, the Patriots, they had nothing, and he easily could have gone over 100 total yards last week if they didn't take their foot off the gas.
Yeah, well, Gabriel Davis went off too.
Yeah,
but did you see
that's the other one. That's both of those guys moved up the depth chart. So I think if in a vacuum, definitely Davis over McKenzie. But when you're factoring in the salaries, then I think they're a lot more even.
Yeah, that's all I was saying, Scott. Is like, given the salary gulf, I think it's close enough. For sure, you're playing Davis over McKenzie if they're the same price, but they're not. Dawson Knox.
Oh boy!
I mean, if Allen's going to throw 3 touchdowns here, Dawson Knox has extremely good touchdown equity. Anybody have a strong Knox take?
Yeah, I'm sure Jake does. But I just want to say, since week 4 or week 5, I've been saying he's basically the 2021 iteration of 2020 Robert Tonyan. And like, oh boy, that just looks dead on. Maybe
even
Robert
better,
Tonyan
even better
on steroids.
Yeah.
He's better than Tonyan.
He's
more thing where it's
he's more athletic than Tonyan. Yeah,
for sure. And it's just like one of those things where, he's averaging like 20.5 fantasy points per game in his top 33% of games, but still just like 5 targets per game in those games where, it's just so reliant on efficiency, and that's so hard to trust. But I mean, it's just been there, and it's smashing, and he looks great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with tight ends, though, Scott. I mean, if we're not playing Kelsey, we're not playing Kittle, we're chasing touchdowns, and Knox by far has the best touchdown equity of any of those non-Kelsey guys.
He'll also probably lead the slate in snaps.
What's that?
Oh yeah, he's given up nothing to back up to his backup. Nothing.
100% snaps.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be one of the lower owned tight ends of the slate, and in which case I think he's a pretty great GPP play. I mean, he was 1% owned last weekend, which was hilarious.
Well, for a decent reason though, because the Chiefs have locked down tight ends in the past 4 weeks. I mean, nothing. So, but I'm not saying that Knox is. It's a polarizing situation with Knox because what 6 touchdowns last 8 games. We know he can do it, and we know he can make it look sexy while he's doing it. But at the same time, the Chiefs have been really good. Ben Neiman has been playing out of his mind defending tight ends, and I go back and forth with it. And I've increased my exposure. I've dropped it. I've increased it. I've dropped it. I just keep going back and forth, adding him and subtracting him from my lineups.
I will say that I would limit having Dawson Knox without Allen or Mahomes. I think in the scenario where this game isn't the highest scoring of the week, then Knox probably doesn't crack, the top 3 tight ends.
Yeah, that makes sense. Johnny, I think I asked you this last week, but Allen and Singletary together, how live is that here?
I think it's in these playoff slates. I think it's fine. If the Bills are the highest scoring team on the week, then that can still get there because Singletary's still one of the best running back plays on the slate. His role is just so good that if this game blows up, and Allen runs for 60 yards and throws for 303, then he can be QB1 and Singletary can still get there. But I would limit it. I wouldn't want to be like all in on Allen and Singletary. And probably in like the Millie Maker, I probably wouldn't do it.
Okay. Makes sense. I mean, for what it's worth, I think Singletary is the top 1 running back play on this slate, man. He just has so many avenues. Goal line rolls there, 16 carries inside the 10 over his last 6 games. I mean, if they trail, he's going to get dump offs. I mean, there's just so many pathways for him to get there. And I just don't really see anybody else that's really close to his role. I mean, Fournette, if he comes back, we'll have question marks about his workload. Mitchell, we have question marks about his workload to begin with.
The only one close is Henry.
Yeah.
I agree. I had Singletary as the clear RB1.
He's got the highest floor. Henry's got the highest ceiling.
Yep.
Agree.
I agree. Yeah, Singletary is a great play. Chiefs side, I mean, I think this game comes down to like how much of Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce, because Tyreek Hill, I mean, I've been beating this drum for a month now. Like, he's not 100%. And Kelce's been, I know the Bills have been great against tight ends this season, but Kelce's not a tight end, and Kelce has owned the Bills as of late. Wes, what are your thoughts here on Mahomes, Kelce, and all these Chiefs guys in the passing game here?
Yeah, I'm not big on Tyreek here. I think this is a bad situation with Taron Johnson, and I think Kelce's. I think they're going to rely on Kelce. He's going to put up the numbers. I just, I don't see the ceiling here to spend up for him. I think it's. I'm not saying 0% exposure. I'm just saying I don't think I'm gonna end up devoting anything to him beyond just a couple of darts in my GPPs. But I think he's gonna get it done. I think he's a floor play. I hate to say it, but I think he's a floor play because I have a hard time betting against Poyer and Hyde here because we can say that Kelsey's not a tight end, but it doesn't matter because Poyer and Hyde are going to play him for whatever he is. Right. And there's nobody better in the game. Nobody. It's not even close. I mean, they're like top 3, the two of the top 3 safeties in the league this year in coverage.
Yeah. So I mean, if Hill's going to get locked down with these Bills corners and Kelsey's in a tough spot, who are you going to? Pringle?
Oh, I love Pringle this week. Pringle this week. If he scale here, I got him above McKenzie, but of course he's priced lower, so he's got that advantage. But Pringle, man, cover 4. So his fantasy points per route jumps by 31%, yards per route run by 23%, yards per target by 23%, and his targeted passer rating by 26%.
Damn. Here for Pringle then.
158 targeted passer rating. It's the highest among all qualified wide receivers against cover 4.
Damn. All right, we got to real quick. Let's talk through these running backs here. Let's just say Edwards-Helaire is elevated. Johnny, how do you think these guys are going to shake out in terms of workload with McKinnon and CEH?
I think we see like a split. I think CEH probably still starts. I have a hard time imagining their first round pick being the backup to Jerick McKinnon's corpse that has been reinvigorated.
He did look good last week, though.
He did.
He looked real good.
And I think McKinnon's probably the best option for the type of offense they run. But what are they just they just figured that out and now he's going to start. I don't really buy that. So I think CEH probably starts, and what really stinks is that he's probably the goal line back. So McKinnon's ceiling feels really limited. But I think in scenarios where this like really shoots out and Mahomes throws the ball 55 times, then I think McKinnon is interesting in those kinds of builds.
Now that's what it is really exciting about, because I love these matchups that we have. Like none of them really seem that over the top. I think probably the closest one is Tennessee and Cincinnati. I think Tennessee's got that's just me. I won't even go there. But my point is we're going to see a lot of really good quarterbacks throwing the ball like 50 times this weekend. I love that. Going into the weekend.
Yeah, this is a great game. All right, let's pick this game real quick, guys, because I think it's interesting. Wes, Bills, Chiefs. Who you got?
Chiefs.
Scott?
Bills.
Bills. All right, Johnny?
Bills.
Jake?
I like the Chiefs.
Ooh, all right. I'm gonna make it 3-2 Bills. That's what I've been leaning on all week.
We already know who you were picking anyway. We saw your staff picks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to get Jake and Johnny's thoughts too, because they're not picking. But yeah, it's such a good game, man. All right, let's make a lineup here real quick. Ben, are we good to go on that? I know you said we might have had an issue. Okay.
Can we just talk for a second about the meta game of this specific DFS slate, which really popping out to me is like all of the best value, it seems, is coming from the high-priced wide receivers, which makes more sense to, I think, go cheap elsewhere for like a single entry tournament lineup. Johnny, is a Cup plus Adams lineup at all possible or viable or optimal?
It is possible. I know that.
Yeah, it's possible.
I had a nice Rodgers trip stack with Cup in it that I liked.
Yeah, and that the Adams Cup pairing will be pretty low owned, I think, which is interesting because it's like, they're only 8K, and on, if this was 5 weeks ago, they, we would have been shook if they were both 8,500. But that's kind of how DraftKings has set up this slate. They want the plebes who lost their fantasy home leagues to be able to build a good lineup. So that's why, they do this in the playoffs. And it makes it fun though, because,
this is a fun slate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you have to get everything right. If you have a guy, and the meta on this, Scott, too, is like the adjustments, if you have a guy in the Bengals Titans game on your main lineup and he scores 2 fantasy points, you have to change that team. Just because it's so easy to make a good lineup that, a guy who busts early on really hurts you.
I have a couple of lineups with a top 5 quarterback, Adams, Cup, and Henry. But I had to stick Jerick McKinnon in my lineup.
One thing I wanted to mention with the Tyreek situation is, so the heel injury he has is the exact same one he had in 2018, according to Andy Reid. He spent a week on the injury report listed as questionable, but played in that game. He was not particularly effective, 19% yardage market share. But the next week, 27% yardage market share. And then the week after that, 36%. So at least in 2018, it did seem he healed pretty quickly from that injury, though Johnny and I have talked about for years now. Hill has never played particularly well when injured. He's like about 80% cheaper than his lowest price of the year. First time he's been under 8,000. But when he has been injured, and maybe this injury is not so serious a week after
last week.
Right, exactly. But typically he has performed worse than 80%.
Scott, did Reed say it was the same foot that he had the heel on?
Said it was the same injury he had in 2018.
Interesting. All right. Lineup, guys. You guys want to? I think we were kind of all on Rogers double stacks. You guys want to start there? What do you think we should start, Scott?
You want to try and do a Cup Adams for fun?
I'm down. I'm down for anything, man. I mean, we're gonna have to punt with McKenzie, Cobb, Grayson, probably two of those guys.
let's punt with Cobb. Let's maybe also punt with Lazard or DeGora.
Lazard, all right.
You guys can
we'll lock
decide
in
that.
Cup Adams. Lock in Rogers.
I like the ancillary receivers in Green Bay a lot more than the ancillary receivers for Stafford.
Yes.
I will say though that like if we're doing a Rodgers triple, then we definitely need one of the home run hitters from San Francisco.
Kittle.
Yeah, I think it's Kittle.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I don't think Rodgers pays off a triple stack if San Francisco is a dud.
All right.
Is there a way we could do this without playing McKinnon? I'd assume not, right?
It's going to be
Let's
tough.
make a few lineups.
We're about to find out here.
You could probably stick with Singletary.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Singletary is such a good price. Okay, so we've got in there right now Rogers, Singletary, Cup, Adams, Cobb, and Kittle.
Well, if you put McKenzie in there, then you may not have to go with McKinnon, but
Can we make a few lineups? Can we do like a Stafford stack and a Allen stack and a Burrow stack?
Yeah, Ben's got a record, Scott. It's all good.
Johnny, real quick, what are your 3 favorite stacks of the week? You would have it, what, relative to ownership, Rodgers, Stafford, Burrow? Rodgers, Stafford, Allen? Or
Probably. Though I like Allen with
higher.
mini stacks in it. So
right.
like I don't love
Allen
the
gets
Bills
boosted
onslaughts.
overall.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wes, you're saying we don't have to go down to McKinnon here? We play McKenzie?
I don't know. I don't have the screen up where I can see what you're doing. But I'm just saying I'm just tossing ideas out there.
Okay.
If you stick McKenzie in there at 3.5.
Let me see here. If we do that, we could get up to Dylan. Play Titans defense.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go. Well, yeah, they're all priced around the same.
Yeah.
Defense.
Yeah.
So you have Singletary in there.
Yeah. I got Singletary in there and it spat out Dylan and Titans defense to the left.
I do like the Bills run defense better than the 49ers, but
I don't like Dylan with all the other Green Bay guys.
No.
Yeah, so I think you're going to have to go McKinnon.
Yeah, I don't think you can do the Rodgers triple with Cup.
Yeah, it's tough. Let me see.
The Rodgers double.
What about an Allen, like he was saying, an Allen with a mini stack, and then put Cup and Adams in there?
Do that.
I just want to see real quick what we can do. Where does this get us here?
You could go Cyril Grayson across from Cup.
Brings us to Diggs. Not crazy about that either. Yeah, I kind of like Grayson, man. See what he does. See what happens with the news tomorrow. But all right, guys, Ben's got to run here in a couple minutes, but this has been great, man. Another great season. Johnny and Scott, always appreciate coming on here and talking to you guys every week. Jake and Wes, been awesome talking to you guys here today. Everybody that's listened to us all year, man, you guys are the fucking best. We love you guys so much for hanging with us, hopping in Discord, hopping in chat, interacting with us, man. Yeah, it's been a great year. 20th episode was my favorite of the year. It's been a great time, man. Everybody, good luck this weekend. Hope you guys, cash all your bets, get everything right with your DFS lineups. Best of luck there. Somebody go win $1 million. Let's do it. For Scott, for Johnny, for Jake, for Wes, for Ben Behind the Glass, I'm Graham. Guys, great season. See you next year.